President Joe Biden be heading to the witness stand? In the fall of 2022, Hunter Biden's attorney, Chris Clark, who just withdrew from the case last week, issued a warning. If the Department of Justice charged the president's son, the defense side would call Joe Biden to the stand to testify, according to some really great reporting from Politico. Now, in the letter, Clark threatened that should prosecution of Hunter go forward, quote, President Biden now unquestionably would be a fact witness for the defense in any criminal trial. He continued, this, of all cases, justifies neither the spectacle of a sitting president testifying at a criminal trial, nor the potential for a resulting constitutional crisis. Of the new revelations, Republican strategist Chris Sims tweeted, quote, Hunter Biden's lawyers explicitly argued that the DOJ wouldn't want to be at odds with their boss, Joe Biden, and therefore should cut a sweetheart deal for him. And so they did, until a judge asked a few simple questions about it.
Yeah, this is wild bombshell reporting from Politico. There were leaked some previously unseen documents that gives a lot of insight into how that initial sweetheart deal, so, you know, as it's being described, was negotiated. The deal that fell apart, as described here, after a few questions were asked about the legitimacy of it. And what's so incredible about it is that it seems like Hunter Biden, as much as Joe Biden has gone to bat for his son and run cover for him, you know, in these ways that can be interpreted as just being a good parent or what have you, but said, I don't know anything about anything. My son has not done anything wrong, keeping him close physically and socially and all of those kinds of things. Hunter Biden's attorneys were basically arguing that, threatening almost, that we will have to put Joe Biden on the stand if you do prosecute Hunter Biden. You don't want that conflict of interest. You don't want that dog and pony show, so you better let us free. And the other irony that comes out of this reporting, the other kind of interesting factoid, is that they were also arguing that because the probe began during the Trump presidency, and because Donald Trump was so vocal about wanting to go after Hunter Biden, talking about the Biden crime family, et cetera, that it would be a stain on the Justice Department if they actually did go after Hunter Biden, because it would be perceived as a political persecution by Donald Trump. So they're arguing both, you know, bias of the Justice Department in this one way, at the same time that they're asking for explicitly special treatment with the threat that they're going to put the President of the United States of America on the stand.
And there are more details on the deal in this Politico report, which is, it is wild how this deal was a godsend to Hunter Biden and the Bidens in general. It was going to protect him from a lot of potential future legal liability. So the United States, I'm here reading it. The United States agrees not to criminally prosecute Biden outside of the terms of this agreement for any federal crimes encompassed by the attached statement of fact and statement of facts attached to this memorandum. This agreement does not provide any protection against prosecution for any future conduct by Biden or his associates. So if he went out and created new crimes, those wouldn't be covered. But these statements of facts refer to specifically his time on the boards of the Ukrainian energy company Briahna and a Chinese private equity fund, as well as his business venture with the head of a Chinese energy conglomerate. So specifically, what is being taken out of the realm of possible prosecution is the very stuff that is of greatest public concern and potentially involves Joe Biden, the president.
Yes, the pay-to-play scheme, the alleged pay-to-play scheme.
It's totally a sweetheart deal. Not because giving him a lesser situation with the gun or the tax issue is so wildly out there. That's not that wildly out there. You know, prosecutors work out deals depending on how good your attorney is.
Especially the gun charge. I think there's some evidence that that's normally not charged up that hard.
And his side was going to argue that even the law that says you could go after someone for lying on the form about a gun actually violates the Second Amendment. You get a conservative Supreme Court, they would agree with that in a heartbeat. So fine. But immunity from prosecution for the actual pay-to-play stuff, for the corruption, for the stuff that his dad is on phone calls about, the dinner, all of that stuff. That is what you're like. This is better. You want to be prosecuted under these terms, like because that gets you off the hook for the future thing.
It's broad immunity. I mean, we're talking about like a half dozen years of tax filings. He says it was an accident. I was in the throes of drug addiction. I wasn't purposely trying to avoid taxes. But because of the time range that this encompasses, that the plea deal encompasses, and the nature of the crime, it's not just taxes, remember, it's taxes for sums paid for what purpose, you know?
Yes.
That it is incredibly broad. And frankly, remarkable that the kind of liberal media has held off paying more attention to this story in a serious way for as long as it has. But I will note the tides very much seem to be turning on this in terms of the nature of the coverage, even in the most kind of liberal left coastal of magazines. I've noticed over the course of the past month, the past few weeks, that there is a lot more attention being paid to this, and people are not as interested in running cover for Hunter Biden as it seems Joe Biden has been.
And how, I mean, I'm sorry, but this is very discrediting of David Weiss that he put together this deal that, again, this is not a trivial issue, given that President Trump was impeached over something very related to this for the statements he made and his attempts to grapple with Ukraine in such a way that was just going to help his campaign, but was pointing out what he described was illegitimate financial behavior by Hunter Biden and by Joe Biden and this judge and this investigation. They impeached him over it. So the fact that you would take an action that would prevent the government from ever looking into this matter again, even if new facts came to light, is crazy.
Yeah, I do wonder if there's legitimacy to the idea that the arguments that were being made by Hunter Biden's lawyers were persuasive for Weiss. So the idea that you can't come after us, you can't come after Biden because it would impugn the integrity of the Justice Department on the basis that Donald Trump has made it so clear that he would, for political reasons, like to go after Hunter Biden. Like, do you seem like you are corroborating the political impulses of a departing president if your genuine investigation happens to line up with what he's been advocating for from a political perspective? And what do you do in that situation if you are Weiss, who, again, was a Trump appointee, who doesn't seem to have a background which would lend him to want to, for political reasons, protect Hunter Biden, but who might, for professional reasons, have been persuaded that the DOJ can't look like it's a handmaiden of the Donald Trump agenda?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's very bad. It's just very bad. This would have stop the government from looking into what sounds like very legitimate problems. Good on the media for now covering it. Politico did a good job with this piece. Obviously, Politico was frankly the most guilty party in the kind of whitewashing of the laptop story to begin with. They are the ones that actually printed the headline that said, 50 or whatever the number was.
Generals.
Former intelligence officials say laptop is Russian disinfo. That was their headline. When actually the intelligence people had said it reminds us of Russian disinfo, which that too was irresponsible, but it was Politico that took it a step farther and injected the idea that it's being asserted as disinformation. So we've come a long way from those days. Yeah,
well, meanwhile, more damning reporting in the New York Times reveals that until this year, David Weiss, who has led the probe into the tax and business dealings of Hunter Biden since 2018, appeared willing to forgo any prosecution of Hunter Biden at all and end the investigation. However, according to the Times reporting, Weiss's staff recalls he suddenly had a change of heart in the spring, right around the time a pair of IRS officials on the case accused the Justice Department of hamstringing the investigation.
The Times also reports that just this summer, Hunter Biden's lawyers lobbied the Justice Department to prosecute whistleblowers Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, contending they broke the law by spilling details of the investigation to Congress. Now, a spokesperson for Mr. Weiss had no comment, according to the New York Times.
Yeah, whatever one thinks about whether or not prosecutorial discretion is real, and therefore the IRS whistleblower testimony might not have been as dispositive to, let's say, someone inclined to be trustful of the DOJ and Weiss and Joe Biden's Justice Department and all of that. These leaked documents that demonstrate that the deal on its face was so irregularly favorable, and that Hunter Biden's lawyers themselves were making what, in any other context, we'd be describing as something akin to like a threat or blackmail of his own father, of the President of the United States. I think gives a much more clear picture of the bias afoot here. You can make the debate, okay, they can negotiate a better tax terms on the tax parts of the deal, and the IRS whistleblowers who say that they should have charged him more harshly on the tax crimes were just subjective or political or partisan or wrong. But it's much more difficult to argue, I think, with the nature of the arguments that Hunter Biden's own lawyers were making, and the fact that now you can see behind the scenes that there was this objection from both the judge in the case and the legal community at large, saying it's the immunity, it's the long-term immunity that's the really difficult aspect of this negotiation to justify on any grounds.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, we will continue following this story, of course, and we'll have more rising in just a minute. Stay tuned.